Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman, and he's Jim Salisbury. And Jim, the Phillies were so close this weekend to their first road series win of 2021. And alas, it did not happen again. They blew 3 leads Saturday night after the 8th inning and just a crushing loss, a crushing end to their 5-game win streak. And then Sunday night, they were never really in it behind Aaron Nola. And we'll get to the Nola game, but I just want to start with that Saturday night game because, you know, it was a kind of game that if the Phillies would have won, I think that there would have been stories written about, you know, if they came back from 3 post-8th inning leads, for example, there would have been stories written about them like oozing momentum and finding their next gear. And instead, it has a chance to really wake up the Braves. I mean, the Phillies were 1 strike away from winning that series, improving to 6-2 against the Braves. And instead, Atlanta now has to feel really good about itself.
Yeah, you make all good points. And they woke up Freddie Freeman a little bit. He hit home runs in the second and third game, and he had been really slumping to the point where he sat out a game right before the Phillies series when they were in Washington, I believe. But a demoralizing loss. Again, because of the pandemic, we're not in the clubhouse, but, you know, I can only imagine what that clubhouse was like after Saturday night's game. I mean, I've seen it time and time again. The clubhouse becomes a funeral parlor after you lose a game like that. And I have to think it was especially acute after that game because you'd had such a good week. You were sitting on 5 wins in a row, a chance to go to 6 wins in a row against a division opponent, like you said, really taking upper hand in the season series. 1 strike away, 1 strike from shaking hands and kicking back in the clubhouse and kind of reliving it all, and then reliving all the positives. And then what it becomes is you stew in your own juices overnight because it's such a painful loss. And as you mentioned, they were never in the next game. I didn't have a good feeling about Nola from the get-go Sunday night. And I just didn't think he looked aggressive against the first batter of the game, Ronald Acuna. Why? Was it because Acuna got hit the game before? And maybe you're reluctant to challenge inside to incite something? I just don't know. But he did not look aggressive from the first batter on. He walked Acuna, gives up 4 in that inning, and Phillies offense amounted to really 1 swing, the first pitch of the game, and then nothing after that. So different kinds of losses Saturday night and Sunday night. But again, they were both troubling to me. And you got I think, a good time for a day off Monday and come back and try to get something going in Washington, which is the place you won your last road series, albeit a 2-game road series last year. So they've really struggled on the road, 5-11. Got to turn it around. Got to win a series. And I think this series really favors them down in Washington. But we've said this before, but, you know, you got Chase Anderson on Tuesday night, and then you come back with Wheeler and Eflin. So I think the pitching favors them, but they still haven't shaken off Saturday night's loss, still haven't rebounded from that. So we're going to see if they can do that on Tuesday night. It was a damaging loss, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that like situations like we just saw over the weekend are why Phillies fans over the last, let's say 3 years, to keep it at that, have had trouble just fully buying into this team. And it's because it's tough for them to just keep the good vibes rolling, like to keep things moving. I'm not saying you got to go on a 14-game winning streak, but to have a 5-game winning streak and in that kind of fashion, and then to quickly follow it with 2 straight losses. You can think of situations in the past couple of years where they followed like 4 straight wins with 4 straight losses, and it's just kind of canceled it out. I think that that's really, you know, the reason, and it just speaks again to like some of the holes the team has. You know, blown saves. I'm not saying Hector Neris is solely responsible for them losing that series by any means, but he has had some just awfully timed blown saves in recent years. And it seems like every year, right around this time, first or second week of May, we're having the conversation in Philadelphia. Should he be the closer? Should he remain the closer? Joe Girardi gave Neris a vote of confidence after Saturday night's game, said that, you know, Hector's pitched well for them. But I posed the question to you. I mean, do you think that a month from now, Hector Neris is still going to be the 9th inning guy?
I don't know, but I go back to October, you and I talking. I didn't think he should have been the closer. I thought you needed to go out and replace him as the closer. Sometimes I don't think he has the stomach for it. We've seen, when he blows one, it's usually, it's an inferno. It's big, So I thought going back months ago that should have been a priority in replacing him. He had a good spring. Joe felt confident with him. Joe went with him, but they did bring in other options. Alvarado, I have big worries about him closing ball games just because of his the way he doesn't really pound the strike zone, I think you could say. I don't know if he throws enough strikes to close. I think at times he could certainly do it, but other times I worry maybe Coonrod could do it. They brought him in. So they brought in other options. Archie Bradley's going to come off the DL soon. I do think they have, like I said, other guys who can get a look down there, including Brandon Kinsler, who might be the best of the bunch. He just doesn't profile because of his stuff, but he certainly has the stomach to do it. Do I think Hector will be the closer in a month? I would probably say no. And I'm not one for big predictions. I usually am pretty patient and let things play out. But I think, Joe is going to give him that vote of confidence because that's the kind of guy Joe is. That's the way managers operate these days. You don't have Tommy Lasorda coming out and berating you on the mound for giving up 4 straight hits. I mean, they are very mindful of a player's psyche and they smooth things out and they say the right thing publicly. But I got to think deep down inside the wheels are spinning about getting a look at somebody else, because Coonrod had a nice save the other night, because Bradley's due back, because Kinsler can handle it, because Alvarado's there. So, I don't know what the flashpoint will be, but I think Hector's can be a very valuable guy down there. He has been a valuable guy. I just think it's time to look at him in more of a setup role. I have serious questions whether he can get the last out in a playoff clinching game, or the game that clinches a playoff berth to go to the postseason, which this team would take after 10 years of not being in the postseason. I have serious doubts if he can get the last out of a series, a playoff series, and obviously I would have doubts whether he could get the last out of a World Series. So I think lockdown closer is one of their big holes, and I think it will be addressed. And to answer your question, I think he'll probably be in another role in a month, but maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised. He's a great guy. Hector's a great guy and a great teammate. Know him well, and maybe he'll turn it around and surprise us. I wish him well in that role, but I just think probably Girardi, pitching coach, management's wheels are all spinning, looking at who's going to be the next guy to try to get the ninth inning closed down without giving everybody a heart attack.
And you referenced Archie Bradley's imminent return. He's been out since April 11th with an oblique strain. The Phillies have quietly really missed him. He was their most expensive relief acquisition, 1 year, $6 million, and goes on the IL very quickly. First time since his rookie season that he's missed this much time, Archie Bradley. I've also been very impressed by Brandon Kinsler. He pitched a great inning Saturday night that really kept the Phillies in the game. He enters in the 10th inning with that ghost runner on second base and quickly advances to third on a ground out. And then the Phillies intentionally walk the bases loaded, and Kinsler gets right out of it with a weak tapper to third base and then a strikeout to end the inning. Fired up, coming off the mound. The Phillies take the lead very quickly there on Nick Maton's RBI double. And you're thinking, wow, Brandon Kinsler's like the story of this game. And then obviously it changes when the Phillies lose, but he's just had a knack this season, and really last season when he did a good job escaping damage with the Marlins, of just finding his way out of precarious spots.
Yeah, he's got big cojones, as they say. I mean, he doesn't have top of the scale stuff. He's got a really good sinker, and he uses it, and he goes after people. He's not afraid out there, and it shows. And, got that big strikeout to end that inning in there with that sinker, and he was pumped up, and he should have been pumped up. That, like you said, should have been one of the plays of the game, and it wasn't. It was I don't want to overstate things. That was just a hideous loss. I mean, you can't happen. You fight back. You get an out, like you get an inning like that from Kinsler. It just can't happen. It had to be incredibly demoralizing in that clubhouse, and I think it showed the next night. So if I agree they've missed Bradley, he was a bit of a head scratcher early, velocity down a little bit. I'm interested to see what he looks like when he comes back. But I can see why they wanted Kinsler. I can see why Bryce Harper wanted him. The guy's got some intangibles, and you got to have talent and skill, but intangibles, you also have to have that in this game, and he's got them. So good for him.
All right, so now the Phillies move on to a 3-game series in D.C. against the Nationals. It's the first time the Phillies have seen the Nationals yet this season. They've gotten a heavy dose of the Mets and Braves, nothing yet of the Nationals and Marlins. And you have to, from a Phillies perspective, you have to, like anytime you look at the schedule and see that it's going to be a Phillies-Nationals series, with no Max Scherzer, especially considering that he's really taken off since a rough first start. Scherzer's, you look at his numbers, he's right on par with most of his prime Nationals years. But in this 3-game series, it looks like the Phillies are going to face Eric Fedde in game 1, John Lester in game 2, Patrick Corbin in game 3. Patrick Corbin, not at all what he was a couple years ago when, he signed that long-term deal with the Nationals and thrived immediately. What do you make of these 2021 Nationals that we haven't seen a lot of, and what are you expecting or looking for in this series?
Yeah, I mean, a week ago, I think they were in first place. They had a little run, right? And now they've slipped all the way back down. It's early, but they obviously, I don't think, have the firepower. They really miss Rendon. Obviously, this would probably be a subject of debate in Washington, but they obviously miss Harper. You don't take 2 bats like that out of the lineup in consecutive years and not feel it. They do have Juan Soto, and he's incredibly talented, incredibly dangerous. They do have Trey Turner. I think he's a tremendous player. But Strasburg's had some injury issues. Scherzer, as you mentioned, is he's starting to look ageless. He's a great one. It's great to avoid him. But Patrick Corbin now, in his 3rd year down there, off to a really rugged start. High ERA. I mean, you got John Lester going to the 2nd game. He's not the guy he was. He's more of a 5th starter, and he's only, I think, making it like his 3rd start. And Fedde, you've seen at times, he's sort of a back-end guy. Harper usually gets up to play his former team. I mean, Harper would get up for a Sandlot game, but I'm sure he'd be a little more even amped for this series. So I look at it as I think the Nationals, are probably a 2nd division team in this race. Because they're sort of built on starting pitching, and Corbin is not delivering, and Scherzer's had injury problems. So when you're not getting that production out of your strength, you're only getting it on a really one guy, Scherzer, you can't be as good. It would be like if the Phillies were only getting production out of one of their big 3 in their rotation. One of the reasons the Phillies are successful so far, over 500, a game over 500, a game out of first place, is because of their big 3, Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin. So if those 3 are not clicking, you're not going to be as good. And that's what's happened, I think, down in D.C., in addition to taking some big bats out of that lineup. So first of 19 games against those guys this year, but they always give you fits. You got to go in there and you got to take this one. And game one is the most important game if you want to win the series. You got to come out and win game 1. And, they're going at you with Chase Anderson, who's had trouble getting through the middle innings. So I think if, with a day off on Monday, if you can get 5 good ones out of Chase Anderson and maybe you lean on the bullpen a little bit, and then, you got to hope Wheeler with an extra day has another good one like he did Thursday, and then Eflin. So got to win some series because, like I said, they're 5-11 on the road. And with that 300 winning percentage on the road, a little over 300, that ain't getting you to the playoffs. I mean, I wrote a little bit about this. I was surprised to see since 1969 when divisional play came in, has been 69 teams that have made the postseason with a losing record on the road. That said, nobody's had this bad of a losing record as the Phillies. So you need to creep it up a little bit if you want to. You need to improve on the road if you want to get to the postseason this year.
Yeah, Juan Soto is off to a slow start for the Nationals. He missed some time with a shoulder strain, and I think it's going to be a season-long concern with them. Is this guy going to see enough pitches to hit with the lack of lineup depth behind him? Like if you have to think about in a run-producing spot whether to pitch to Juan Soto or to Starlin Castro or to Kyle Schwarber, I think it's a pretty easy choice for most teams. But what's pretty funny is that looking at the Nationals' numbers, their second-best offensive player this season has been Josh Harrison, who's been really good for them since the start of 2020. 285 hitter with an OPS 20% better than league average over that span. And you remember, this is a guy who was with the Phillies last year in spring training. Just got me thinking, you look at some of these decisions the Phillies have made the last 2 years, picking Neil Walker over Josh Harrison, this year breaking camp with Ronald Torreyes and David Hale. Joe Girardi has shown a lot of loyalty to guys that he had in New York. And you just wonder, sometimes there's a little too much loyalty as it applies to someone like David Hale as well, who, the Phillies made a decision pretty early on in the offseason to tender him a contract, something in the $900,000 range. And, David Hale's limited to mop-up duty, and he's really struggled a few of the times he's had to come out.
Yeah, if he keeps pitching the way he has been, I don't think he's long for this roster. I think it goes back to, Kingery didn't have a good camp and didn't make the team as the Swiss Army knife, and that's why Torreyes made the team. So Um, it always comes down to, there's nobody better to take their place. So they haven't secured enough quality depth. Last year they went with Goslin and Walker, edged out Harrison. I could see why they wanted to keep Walker and a switch hitter. I could see why, Goslin hit himself onto the team, and that made Harrison sort of the odd man out. But hats off to him; he's played well down there. If you have to have a good bench, but I mean, if you're blaming your 24th, 5th, and 6th men for where you are as a team, I don't know. That tells me you probably got some holes in your 1 through 9, right? And I think the Phillies have some holes in the 1 through 9, and that's why they haven't taken off here. Yes, it's not an ideal bench, but it's not an ideal 1 through 26.
Jim, it's pretty surprising that the Phillies went 5-2 last week when you factor in that their two biggest power hitters, Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins. Harper missed some time there, and he's 2 for 14 over the last week. Hoskins is 4 for 21 over the last week. They've combined for just 2 RBI over that span. We talk a lot about Hoskins just being a streaky hitter. When he hits the homers, when he drives in runs, it happens in bunches. And when he goes south, it's like a really unproductive week. I think the difference for Hoskins this year is that the strikeouts are way up. The walks are way down.
Yeah.
It's just totally different than what we've seen out of Rhys Hoskins for most of his career. I know that I asked you about it a few weeks ago. It was just like, do you see a real change in Hoskins' approach, or is it just that he's making contact earlier in counts and that like the 3-2 pitches are being called strike threes as opposed to ball fours? But I mean, what do you think's going on with Hoskins right now? He was dropped in the lineup to 7th this weekend, which is something we've never seen.
Well, he talked about this early in the season when he was going good, that he was not missing pitches that he should be hitting, and that's a good thing. Lately, just watching him, I think he's getting around the ball more in his swing, which has been a problem when he goes bad. Instead of staying inside that and really driving it, gap to gap, you kind of get around it and you end up hooking it foul. So that's what I'm seeing. A little mechanical thing. What sets that off? Is it timing? Is it trying to do too much? Is it struggling and then, try to get it all back with one swing? I don't know why it breaks down, but he seems to be getting around the ball more. And, having watched Rhys basically for his whole big league career, I think he can get it back with one good swing. I've seen him get it back with one good swing. What he needs is a low line drive to right center, that goes over the second baseman's head and 3 hops the wall for a double. He needs to, hit one in the gap that way. And sometimes that seems to get him back on track when he starts getting around the ball. And you can see it on TV from the center field camera. You can see when he starts getting around the ball, and that's what he is. Instead of just, drive it up the middle, don't yank it to left field. So I actually don't mind him in the 7 hole. If some guys can get on base, that's a pretty good RBI hole, right? But it was, Joe mentioned that it was hard to keep Segura down the lineup, and I agree. A guy came back at 9 hits in his first couple of games back off the IL. But you're right. They need Hoskins to kind of complete that lineup and lengthen that lineup. And they need Harper too. Hopefully he goes down there and has a big series against his former team.
Yeah, when Gene Segura is hitting, it's really fun to watch because he just it's never a pulled single. It's always like a single up the middle or a single between first and second base. And yeah, when he came back 7 for his first 9, he looks like he's going to perhaps stay in that 2 hole for the time being, just because the Phillies need the batting average and the OBP out of those spots. They're also getting more out of Andrew McCutchen, who's been, one of the best hitters in the National League over the last 10 days. And that's been important to the top of the Phillies lineup. But I want to touch on Harper real quick. Looking at PointsBet, and for this Phillies National Series, for Game 1, looking at Bryce Harper 3+ total bases. He's plus 135. to have at least 3 total bases. He's done that only twice in his last 7 games. You get there with a double and a triple or just going deep once. But, this is, again, we've talked about it over the last couple of years, a guy who has a flair for the dramatic. He knows he's facing his former team for the first time this season on the road. I've actually, in looking at Harper's numbers against the Nationals as a Philly, what not surprises me, but impresses me is that he's taken his walks. Like, he has 30 walks and 36 strikeouts in those games against the Nationals. You would think that human nature, you get more amped up, you try to kill the ball, but Harper still, remains the same hitter that he is against everybody else, and that, he's going to wait it out. And if you don't throw a pitch to him in the strike zone, he's going to take his base.
No question. And he doesn't deviate from that approach. He is a selective hitter. Leads the league in walks, right, last year. And that's good. I think you can get a little too amped up and come out of yourself a little bit. But 3 total bases, you might get that in the first inning tonight.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the Phillies are not facing like the top Nationals pitchers. I mean, you look at the series, Eric Fedde in the series opener, and then a couple of lefties in John Lester and Patrick Corbin. But Harper's always done a good job of hitting lefties. And at this point in their careers, like, Lester's like a 5-inning pitcher, and Corbin really shouldn't be expected to go 7, 8. I mean, hey, he might unfurl a great start against the Phillies, but he comes into that game with a 7.36 ERA. And then from a Phillies perspective, you have Zach Wheeler going in game 2 and Zach Eflin on an extra day of rest in game 3. So, you start to project series or think about, what should or should not happen. The Phillies really should win this series.
I agree. I mean, the strength of your team is Nola, Wheeler, Eflin, and 2 of those guys are going in this series. I think you should win this series, but hey, it's baseball. You never know.
Well, it's the Phillies and Nationals for 3 games, and then following that, the Phils have a 3-game series in Dunedin against the Toronto Blue Jays, close to their Clearwater, Florida home. The Blue Jays, a team that entered the week just 1 game over 500, but they have a lot of exciting young talent. I mean, one of my favorite players to watch in all of baseball is Bo Bichette. I think he's a guy who would get a lot more notoriety if he was playing for a different team, perhaps. But, that's an exciting offense, and the Phillies are going to have their work cut out for them even beyond this national series before they return home.
Yeah, I love Bo Bichette too, man. Not a real big guy, but gosh, does he generate bat speed, and he really knows how to use the bat head. They have the youngest group of position players in baseball, and there's some firepower in that lineup. And obviously the series is being played in Dunedin, a place the Phillies are very familiar with. They play there all the time in spring training, and the ball flies there. So I think you could see some slugfests in that series. And, it's up to the Phillies to do a little more slugging than the Blue Jays. But, yeah, a great young group of position players. Biggio, Bichette, Guerrero. It should be a interesting series. I'm sure the Phillies will feel like they're in a going back in time to spring training. But again, 6 more games on the road, not an easy thing for the Phillies, given the way they've played on the road. And then that'll take us to they'll be back next Tuesday to take us to mid-May. And, like I said, they're a game out of first, game over 500. You can stay right around there, through May. And then really, maybe the front office addresses some holes. But, I think, though, folks are a little demoralized by a tough couple of games in Atlanta, if you can get to the end of May, a game over or a game or 2 over and up a game, down a game in the standings, that's not bad. That's not bad with a lot of season left to go. So interested to see what happens though in Washington on Tuesday night. You gotta try to take that first one. They got to try to get some zeros, even if it's not a ton of them. They got to try to get some zeros from Chase Anderson, and then the bullpen having a little rest yesterday. Got to do their thing, and then maybe Wheeler and Eflin can give the bullpen a little rest. So we'll see.
All right, that's going to do it for this Phillies Talk podcast. He's Jim. I'm Corey. We'll talk again in about 72 hours.